What's up, everybody? It's Danny from the Lassercast with my beautiful wife, Athena, and we are going to be talking about episode 4 of The Stand on CBS All Access, of course, based on the relatively short novel by Stephen King. I'm, of course, being facetious. It's, 1,100 plus pages? So, just to give you kind of a summary of where we are, we have... this is episode 4, called The House of the Dead, directed by Daniel Cruddy and Bridget Savage Cole. One of the co-writers of this episode was Owen King, Stephen King's son, along with creator Josh Boone, and there were others. But we both loved episode 1.
Yes.
And then she's been more forgiving of episodes 2 and 3 than I was. I kind of didn't like either of them, but...
I mean, I would say that, episode 1 is my favorite so far. Episode 4 is my second favorite. And I don't have a favorite between 2 and 3, but I did like them.
Yeah, this is definitely closer to the way I felt when the show debuted, which I think is a good thing because this is about I think a 9 or 10 episode series. So you want, by episode 4 or 5, you want to be kicking off to... towards the end.
Yeah, you want to be in the meat of the story.
Yeah. So this episode actually starts for the first time with the main gathering of our main characters, the good guys, so to speak. In Boulder with the 5 town leaders. You have Stu, you have Fran, Larry,
Nick.
There's so many damn characters in the book, let alone
and Glenn.
Nick and Glenn. We met each of these characters already, but now we finally see them together. And this episode got off to a great start for me right away because one of my biggest complaints in episode 2 was Larry Underwood didn't seem to have any charisma for a character who's supposed to be a rock star. And he kind of shows that immediately in this episode, and I thought he did a great job.
I loved him in this episode, and if you remember from episode 1, I was worried that he wasn't gonna, fill the shoes of the original Larry from the 1994 miniseries, whom I loved. But he was like, him and Nick were like, and Tom Cullen were like the stars of this episode.
Yeah. Definitely. So let's talk about Tom Cullen, because 3 episodes in, and we've literally spent maybe a minute meeting Tom Cullen at the end of episode 3. And you don't get a ton of screen time with him, but we were both really blown away with Brad William Henke, I believe his name is. The actor does such a good job to separate himself from Bill Fagerbakke, the guy from Coach, who was in the 1994 original.
Who did a great job.
Yeah, he was great too. But this Tom Cullen, just the way he emotes and the way he talks, I love him right away. I think he might be my favorite character on the show right now.
He kept almost making me cry.
Yeah.
Like at points in this episode.
When he says, when they, obviously, go watch the episode on CBS All Access.
Spoilers.
We're going to talk spoilers. We haven't really spoiled anything yet, but we are going to get into spoilers. When him and, why can't I remember Nick's name? Nick. When him and Nick get to meet Mother Abigail and he introduced himself as Tom from my head, I love that. I really think he's doing a great job. The acting on the show, for the most part, I think has been solid. I just don't know. I'm having more issues than you.
Yeah.
With...
we could talk about the scene that you had.
Well, but I think overall, you even told me, you're going to have to figure out whether I want this to be different from the 94 miniseries or to be like the 1994 miniseries. And I think my issue is I just don't like some of the writing that's being done for the characters. I think the acting behind those characters is fine. And in some parts, it's very good. I just don't like some of the directions that the characters are taking, and that's more of a writing issue than it is an acting issue for me.
It could be a directing.
It could be a directing issue. I just thought, and again, I think that was a lot clearer in the 1994 miniseries. You knew who these characters were, and the episodes were longer. It was 4 90-minute episodes to make 4 2-hour parts of the miniseries, but they have 9 to 10 episodes to kind of introduce people and to set things up. After we get the town meeting, after Larry calms the crowd down with his charisma,
which is the part where I was like, oh my God, this is a great moment. He shows that he's a rock star, which he didn't before.
Yes.
And
this is all before the words "The Stand" even appear on the screen.
Yes.
So she was immediately hooked.
I was completely hooked. Actually, right, like while they were like, they kept cutting back to like the meeting where they were talking about the town meeting and the town meeting. And did they do that, or did they start talking about it first and then went to the town meeting?
No. I think it starts at the town meeting.
Oh, okay, okay, and then they flash back and to a part that I didn't like when they talked about the accent that doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, James Marsden really needs to
a southern accent.
He needs to thicken up the accent. I know I just complimented the acting, and he's fine. We all know Stu is boring, but he needs to thicken up the southern accent. If they're going to call him,
does towards the end of the episode.
I think he throws a yawl in.
I think he almost does when he's trying to like gather the police thing.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, Larry, they talk when they're talking. They're like, oh well, Glenn should because he's such a good speaker, and he is. Like Greg Kinnear, his speeches, I think, in this whole episode are fantastic, especially when he like hooks Harold into coming with them. But Larry saves Stu from whatever his like stage fright, I guess. And then once he's introduced, and calms the crowd down, he's able to speak about what they need to do. And then they do the part where Harold stands up and says, "I think it should be unanimous." Which is straight from the book and the miniseries, which I actually think the old Harold did a little bit of a better job with it. In this episode, Harold, who has so far been my favorite character, has gotten a little extra creepy, and I still wanted him to be half and half for this episode. And I mean, I don't know, they may do it again.
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we get on to Harold, I was just going to say, one of my favorite parts of this episode, and we kind of touched on it, was just having that 5-member group, like the town leaders, like the 5 main characters in Boulder, the 5 main good guys, having them all together. I thought they were great as a group. I thought they were great as a group. I love Greg Kinnear. I don't think he's old enough, even though he's 57.
Still not old enough. The other Glenn was like 79.
In the book, Glenn is in his 50s, but the problem is people in 1994 who were 57 looked 67. In 2021, if you're 57, you look 40. Case in point, our daughter, who's 10 years old, when Glenn Bateman was on the screen, said, "Oh, Daddy, you kind of look like him. I'm 38." Okay? So she's punished. She's punished now. But, so let's talk about Harold, because Harold is my biggest bone of contention in this episode.
You know what I kind of want to do first?
What?
Because I feel like we're jumping all over the place. Can we just, like, do, like, the little plot points of, like, what happens?
Okay.
And then break down each thing? Because I feel like we're being like the miniseries and jumping around.
Well, you are wearing a Lost shirt, so...
Desmond is my constant.
I thought I was your constant.
No.
So, okay. So, yes, this is the episode where they decide that they're going to send the scouts out to Las Vegas to kind of spy on...
the electricity comes on.
Yeah, they're going to spy on Flag. They're also trying to get the electricity up and running.
Nadine and Harold finally connect.
We have the Nadine and Harold story, which if you know your book and miniseries, that is part of Randall Flagg's greater plan.
We meet Dana Jurgens, who...
and we meet her in a flashback.
Yes.
To how, and that's really how Harold and Fran end up finally together with Stu and Glenn on their way.
Which is a little different from the book, but we'll discuss that in a second.
little bit different from the book, but still a fairly similar-ish version of what happens.
And what else? We see the moment that Stu and Franny connect, which is also kind of in that flashback scene.
And then Tom and Nick meet Julie Laurie in a department store.
It looks like a big box store.
Or a warehouse.
Yeah, like a Costco.
Which, again, my only issue with that scene, again, it was perfectly fine in terms of acting and writing, but it literally felt cut and pasted from the 1994 miniseries, and that was where she said to me, you're going to have to make up your mind. Do you want it to be like it, or do you want it to be different? You can't have it both ways. And I'm still wrestling with that. I read the book this summer, and we rewatched the miniseries a month or so ago, so all of that is fresh in my mind, so I'm still wrestling with it 4 episodes in. And, like, I'm getting mad at things that she keeps saying, well, wait till next week. You might see that thing that you want to see. And I'm like, well, until I see it, I'm going to be mad. So I'll give you a perfect example.
Wait.
No.
Right, you might forget.
No, this is a good example. I was mad when we first met Larry in episode 2. Larry is a musician. And I was like, they didn't have him play any music. Did they get an actor who can't play music? This episode... he's playing, last episode, episode 3, and this episode, he's playing music both times. And I was like, well, shut my mouth.
Other things that happen in this episode is the cleanup crew turns into, like, the security crew. And Harold gets the idea for the explosives after Nadine's like, you got to kill them. And then... we'll let you know what happens at the end. Mm-hmm. Also, you know, the thing with Tom, Cullen, and Nick is just a wonderful, like the whole Tom, Cullen, and Nick thread in this episode is just wonderful. So before we get into the Harold and Nadine stuff, there's just 2 little bits that I want to just mention real quick. I said to you when we watched it, there's a scene where Teddy Wyzak, who's, I called him Owen Teague, the actor. The guy from Once Upon a Time who played Pinocchio. Yeah, he is very good friends on the show with Harold. They're on the cleanup crew together, and he finds a DVD of Skyscraper with The Rock, and he goes, you think The Rock is still alive? And I just really like the fact that they're acknowledging the real world. Like, Harold he has a picture of Tom Cruise doing his, like, face on the mirror so that he could practice his phony smile. And they acknowledge that Tom Cruise is real, that The Rock is real. So many times you would see The Rock and they'd be like, oh, The Rock, that's the Boulder, Lane Jackson. And, you know, they'd make up some, like, random actor. So I like the fact that this is set in the real world. The other thing is... Not in one of the territories.
Yes. You mentioned they introduced Dana Jurgens, who plays... She ends up being one of the scouts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she actually volunteers. And I love the casting choice for her. Natalie Martinez was in... I saw her for the first time in one of the Hulu Into the Dark series movies called Down, where she gets stuck in an elevator with this guy. If you have Hulu, go check that out. She's great in that, and really liked her in this. And Dana Jurgens is a kick-ass character in The Stand, so I'm hoping she gets to be that kick-ass character here.
I think she showed the glimpses of it now.
Yeah.
She definitely did.
They also, we meet the judge. The judge in this one is an older woman. In the book and in the movie, in the 1994 miniseries, the judge was an older man, played by Ozzie Davis in the 1994 miniseries. And just the perfection of Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee together, just like Do the Right Thing, I always loved. So to see...
Again, we're going to see what she does.
Yeah.
Her scene hasn't come yet.
Yeah. But, like, it was also such, like, a flash in the pan. Like, oh, why don't we send the judge? And then she's like, okay, I'll go. And then that was it. So it kind of... That part kind of failed for me as a character introduction. let's talk about Nadine and Harold, because that is the main part of this episode, because that is setting up the big betrayal. Again, major spoilers. Harold in the book and eventually in this story, Harold turns, his love for Fran is not reciprocated. She ends up being with Stu, and he is angry and he's jealous. And Flag basically sends his chosen queen, Nadine, to seduce Harold to the dark side.
To suit their purposes.
Yeah. And to basically, the two of them will now plan to kill as many of the Mother Abigail's inner circle as they can. And my problem with this scene is the book goes over the top in describing Nadine as the seductress of Harold. Harold is this pathetic guy. This episode really makes him look
very pathetic.
Super pathetic. I mean, he's like physically and emotionally wrecked by the guy at the truck during that fight scene on the road. Like, he's basically like a quivering mass of goo in the road, while the women, not that women can't beat the hell out of a guy, but they really go out of their way to make Harold look super pathetic.
Franny rejects him, he like curls up in a ball.
And then what's a good way to say this on YouTube? He
prematurely.
Yeah, he gets excited a little too early with Nadine. And I said to you, the only thing that I needed from that scene was for Nadine to then say, "It's okay, Harold, you'll have another chance," and kind of just take him by the wrist and lead him upstairs, so that we as the audience know they're going to do everything they need to do. And this episode does not sell that at all. They basically show him finish a little too soon, and she's like, "Well, you hate Stu Redman, right?" And she just walks off. And Amber Heard is good. All of her personal problems in the real world aside, she's a beautiful woman, and she plays this character well.
I think better than Laura San Giacomo, who I always thought was just like overplayed her.
She
was always like, "Wow."
My whole thing, my whole thing was that the book makes her out to be like she's drawn to Flag, but it's not because of a sense of love. It's more of a sense of like,
and she's scared and horrified of him as well.
She's terrified, but she knows she has to go to him, and the book makes it so that like she gives her body to Harold. That in effect causes Harold to have this new confidence that he now can not be this pathetic wuss of a character and start to plan the murders of these people who he's been writing about and like keeping tabs on. Now he can take that next step to darkness. And that is in him because of the confidence he gets from basically being able to use Nadine in a physical way.
Okay, now so there's two semi-sex scenes in this story. And the Harold and Nadine story I thought was very realistic. He's a virgin, that's what happens. Especially if someone of her caliber comes onto someone. I think that was completely realistic. And I don't mind that they didn't use that as the leverage for him to be confident, because I think they use the ending. I think they're going to use the ending as leverage for his eventual anger towards her and confidence. And then there's the one with that didn't happen with Nick and Julie Lowry, which does happen in the book, who is played wonderfully by Kat McNamara. She was very similar to the 1994 miniseries girl who I don't remember her name.
Shawnee Smith. Yeah.
Shawnee Smith, but, beautiful, unhinged. I think that if this really did happen, that Nick would have bed her because everybody's lonely. And he's handsome, and I'm sure he wasn't a virgin, no matter how deaf or mute he was. And I think it would have been natural for them to, they kind of skipped the whole Tom Cullen got sick, and then, that's why they had some time alone. So I just, I thought that Nadine and Harold were fine. I did think that Nick and Julie Lawry should have had sex. But I'm the opposite. That's nitpicking because I didn't, that was fine. What I want to, because we have to wrap this up. What I want to go into is like my favorite scene. I thought that I had 3 favorite scenes. One was Larry taking, charge because, Stu was like, my most favorite scene was watching Nick and Tom meet Mother Abigail, and just like that was so touching to me and made me like Whoopi Goldberg and not mind so much that she was in an old age home instead of on her rocking, in her rocking chair on the porch. That scene when they come together is beautiful. And at the end, when the lights come on, when Larry is playing America
the Beautiful?
No,
it wasn't the Star Spangled Banner?
It wasn't the Star Spangled Banner.
So he's playing a Hendrix enthused version.
On top of
infused version, yeah.
On electric guitar, which was really, I felt emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, especially since the times that we're in right now. And I guess we can't talk about this episode without talking about the very end, where Harold and Nadine are collecting the explosives, and Teddy Wyzek comes upon them, but he's like, "Oh, Nadine, you have school supplies?" And then Harold walks in, and he doesn't connect that the two are together, and Nadine shoots him. He dies in Harold's arms, but not before saying, "Run." And you can take that to mean, "Oh, run away from her. She's going to shoot you too." Or you could make it be prophetic, like, run away from this situation because it's not going to end well for you.
Yeah.
And we know what happens.
I don't know the name of the actor, but I just wrote, "Oh my God, they shot Paul Rudd Jr." because he looks a lot like Paul Rudd.
We should know his name.
Yeah.
Because he was very, very good in this.
Yeah. I mean, my nitpicks about the way certain characters acted aside, this was, like we said at the beginning, much better episode. For me personally, this was probably the second best episode overall. Much better than episodes 2 and 3, which I really didn't like. And if I wasn't reviewing for this channel, probably would have said, all right, I don't need to watch this anymore. But this episode brought me right back and will hook me in for another few episodes.
And I think next week we're in Vegas. I
hope so.
I think is the episode called Suspicious Minds, which makes me think we're in Vegas.
Yeah. I mean, there's still so many characters that we really don't know much about, like Ray Brentner, who ends up being important. We've literally seen glimpses of, as she's had like literally 5 lines of dialogue total. I think she had 1 line of dialogue in this episode and then walked out of frame. And I was like, okay, guess we're still not going to meet her. Yeah. So,
I'm also wondering, I mean, they seem to have totally cut it out. I'm wondering if they'll ever go back to it. I don't think they have time. But like when Nick was in charge of the jail and the sheriff and like, I guess they totally, I mean, he did get beat up, but I guess they totally just sidestepped that whole. I mean,
and again, that's, I kind of feel like there's never going to be a great version of The Stand, just because what makes the book so great is the details, little moments. Like I'll still go back to Franny's whole family. Like the reason that I liked Franny in the book is because of the backstory, the relationship with her father, overcoming the problems with her mother. And this is 2 televised versions of it that have completely omitted that for time reasons. And because of that, I haven't liked Franny in either series because she just feels like a superfluous female character. Like she's the pregnant female lead. romance interest.
I will say that I do like Stu and Franny a little bit better in this. I mean, I understand why Franny falls for Stu, like, immediately, because James Marsden is a handsome guy. And people like good guys in real life, not in, like, on TV. But, I'm not really sure why he likes her. I guess the vulnerability, of her confession and that. But she just, I don't know. I don't get, there's no chemistry. I don't know why they love each other. Maybe we'll get into it more. I hope so, because they're two very main characters. So yeah, I don't get that, but I did like them a little bit better. They were a little bit more interesting this time around.
James Marsden makes me yawn.
He's so cute.
Yeah.
Dimples, like Harold said.
Well, that was episode 4 of The Stand. Episode 5 next week. I don't know who's going to be on here covering it. Maybe it'll be the 4 of us, Athena and me, with Pete and his wife Sherry. Maybe it'll be the 2 of them again. Who knows? But coming up on the Lasercast channel very, very soon, Chris, Pete, and I have our top horror movies of 2020 list coming. And then we're going to be getting into some more podcast reviews coming up. So stay tuned to the channel, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.